Are you in the market for a new car? Today we're looking at the pros and cons of leasing instead of buying. Here to share his thoughts, we welcome car industry expert Ray Shefska. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ray.
Well, thank you for having me, Hannah. How can I help today?
So many questions. So leasing is a great option for a lot of people, but it might not be for everybody. What are some of the big benefits of choosing a lease?
Well, leasing is a good option for people realistically with good credit and people who prefer to be in a newer vehicle every 2 to 3 years. Leasing allows you to do that because basically what you're doing is you're renting a vehicle for 2 or 3 years and you're just paying the depreciation portion of that vehicle. And a lot of people prefer to know what their exact cost for that new car is going to be for the next 24 or 36 months, and leasing allows people to do that.
It is pretty nice to have that security in terms of the numbers, but you've got some golden rules for us when going through the process, beginning with you can still negotiate the price on a lease.
Not only you can, you should. Part of the way you figure a lease is the amount of depreciation. And the depreciation is based off of how much the vehicle will depreciate based off of the selling price that you've agreed to. So if you can work a discount on the lease of $1,000, $2,000, that's going to lower the amount of depreciation that you're going to have to pay for. Your job as the consumer is to negotiate as low a price as possible for the leasing company that is buying the vehicle you're about to lease.
And a lot of people, you're so hyper-focused on what's that monthly payment, what's that one number, but there are other things to understand like the fees, the insurance, and the residual value of the vehicle.
Yes, the residual value is set by the leasing company and is a percentage of the manufacturer's suggested retail price of that particular vehicle. So that you can't negotiate. What you can negotiate is the agreed upon selling price of the vehicle to the leasing company. For every $1,000 that you save, it impacts the payment approximately $30 per month. So the bigger the discount, the bigger the savings. You do need to be aware of the fact that, for instance, insurance on a leased car is more expensive. And the reason it's more expensive is, well, you're not the buyer. The leasing company is buying it on your behalf, and they require greater limits of liability to protect their interest. And typically that's a little more expensive than just the minimum limits that you need if you're purchasing a vehicle.
What should we keep in mind in terms of maintenance and just everyday wear and tear if we are entering into a lease?
Well, if you're leasing a vehicle, you are still responsible for all the maintenance that comes due. When it's time for an oil change, that's on you. When it's time for brakes, and probably more than likely it won't be, because most leases are based on about 10 to 12,000 miles a year, you shouldn't need brakes in 30 to 36,000 miles. But anything that comes up that is considered normal maintenance, that's your responsibility. Fuel is your responsibility. Insurance is your responsibility. The registration fees are your responsibility. Even though the lease company owns the vehicle, you will be listed on the registration alongside of the leasing company, and those fees, those charges annually, well, they transfer to you.
Okay, how big of an impact does our credit score have when walking into a dealership to even think about leasing a vehicle?
Well, the better your credit score, the lower the interest rate. There is an interest rate on a lease. There are several, or basically 3 factors to the lease: the agreed upon selling price, the amount of depreciation based on the residual that is set by the lease company, and there's a thing called the money factor, which is the finance charge portion of a lease. The money factor is typically pretty low on a lease as compared to a purchase. But it is based on your credit score. How have you handled your credit in the past? If you have a high credit score, you will qualify for the better or best money factor rates from the lease. Now, Here's something as a consumer that you need to realize. A lease is no different in this sense than when you finance a vehicle at the dealership. This is considered indirect lending, and the dealership is allowed to mark up the interest rate, or in this case, the money factor on a lease. So when you're leasing a vehicle, one of the questions you want to discuss is, are you giving me the buy rate on the money factor? Are you selling me the money for what the bank is selling it to you for?
Right, which brings us to private banks versus the manufacturer's own finance arms. I mean, it feels kind of overwhelming to walk into this situation.
Well, it is for a lot of people because they just don't know that much about leasing. Most of the leasing companies today are the captive lenders from the various brands. Ford Motor Company has their own finance arm. Nissan has theirs. Toyota Financial Services, BMW Financial Services. Those are typically the best leases for any particular brand, is the captive lenders. Now, here's something else you need to understand when you're dealing with these lease companies. Some lease companies include gap insurance as part of their lease program. Now, what is gap insurance? That is guaranteed asset protection. So if your lease car gets totaled and your insurance company will only pay the value of the vehicle, and there's a gap between that value and what is still owed on the lease, the gap insurance will cover that. Some companies include that in the lease. There are others, and one of the largest is Toyota Financial Services. They do not. So that could be something you want to look into and getting on your own, or the dealership would probably offer to you as a additional benefit to protect your interests.
Ray, you're an encyclopedia. Thank you so much for sharing some of your knowledge with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And can I figure out how to get that Summer in a Glass here in Ventnor, New Jersey?
Pretty nice. Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you, Hannah.
All right. We'll have more information on our website at KATU.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.